Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. Redditors who have witnessed something that they will never forget. What was it? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. While working in the pulmonary ward at a university hospital in my town, I got to know this older man in his mid to late 70s whom I ended up having this grandpa relationship with. We could joke about pretty much anything, the darker the better. Once I came into his room with all his kids and grandchildren present, he said to me, "All right, Havard, so they haven't fired you yet?" I replied, "You're still breathing?" We both laughed. His family had this big what the F look on their faces, not understanding anything going on between us. Perhaps a month and a half later, I was working a night shift, and we always visit the patients when we start our shifts to let them know who's working that night. He was sitting on his bed eating a sandwich, watching the news on television. This was around 2200, 10 p.m. He seemed fine and everything was great. We talked and laughed, and I told him that I'd come back in a few hours and that he'd call if he needed anything. At 0200, I made another round to his and others' rooms to literally make sure that he and the others were all breathing. I found him hyperventilating on the bed. I pressed the alarm button and two other nurses came running. I sat down next to him. He took my hand and squeezed it hard. He looked at me as he started to tear up, obviously scared. Perhaps a minute later his heart stopped and he died right in front of me. I've seen a lot of death in my lifetime, but after this incident I quit my job and never looked back. I still miss him after all these years. About 20 years ago, I was driving up the mountains of western Wyoming one morning at the end of a mild rainstorm. To my left was a rainbow that appeared to follow me just a few yards away from my car. As I turned the corner, the rainbow seemed to drop directly into a mountain lake. I wish I had found a place to pull over and take it in longer. I watched a man get run over and killed by a monster truck in 2007. He was the announcer guy for the event and walked right in front of one of those trucks as it was coming back from a jump. His wife and kids were in the audience and witnessed it as well. The driver of the truck was one of his friends, a really sad and horrible situation that I'll never forget seeing. I was walking in Manhattan at evening rush hour, and a commuter van pulls over in the middle of the street and a guy goes flying out of the side door. Then the van emptied out and like 5 other guys in suits jumped out yelling and started beating the shit out of the first guy. This went on for like 20 to 30 seconds, and then everyone except the first guy got back in the van and drove off. The guy who got beat down just stood up and walked off. To this day, I badly want to know what the F he did in that van to get his ass beat by his coworkers on the drive home. 40 years ago, SoCal freeway on my way to work. Close to or in the fast lane. Traffic starts slowing up. I catch a motorcycle rider in my peripheral vision to my right not paying attention. Cars are virtually dead stopped. He rear-ended a car doing probably 65. Head over heels, what appeared to be 100 somersaults as he bounced all over the freeway. I almost threw up when I saw it. Fast forward a few years, I'm at work somehow chatting with a group of coworkers. One of the coworkers that I had seen but didn't know, also missing his right arm, was in the discussion. After some discovery, we both came to the conclusion that it was him that was the motorcycle rider. Yikes. I figured after that he was dead. Was working on hospice. I had a little old lady who liked me to visit her every couple weeks, mostly just to chat. Her family moved her to a nursing home, and I told her that I would still come by and see her there. She had a private room all to herself. On one of my first visits to the nursing home, I asked her if I could bring her anything, and she said a chocolate bar and a bottle of Coke because they had neither at the nursing home. So it became our routine every other Wednesday after 3 p.m. I'd be there with a Coke and a candy bar. So on this one Wednesday, I come in, and she's lying down in bed. I tried to wake her to tell her I was there, but she just sort of mumbled that she was tired and didn't really wake. I walked around the facility for a bit to kill some time to see if she would wake, but if anything, she was even deeper asleep. So I left the Coke and the M&Ms on her dresser with a note saying that I was there and that I would see her again in 2 weeks. I did my documentation for the job that I was there and that I headed out of the parking lot. I'd been there a total of maybe 30 minutes. As I'm opening my car door, my boss calls me and says, "We got a death. I need you to go there and stay with the body till the funeral home comes." Regular hospice policy. I ask for which patient at which address, and she says the name of the nursing home I'm at and the little old lady's name. At that point I started crying and saying there's no way that she's dead. I was just with her. Apparently, I had talked to little old lady just as she was passing away. I went back in and sat with her body till the funeral home came for her. Tampa, Florida, 2015. A man and a woman were arguing in the parking lot of a bowling alley. The man shot the woman in the head, turned the gun on himself, and pulled the trigger too. The woman died, and the man was barely alive. Still not sure if he died. I had front row seat as everything unfolded about 20 feet in front of me. I was so stunned. It happened so suddenly. I'll never forget watching the life drop out of both of their bodies and the woman's lifeless gaze. My significant other's attempt at ending his life and finding him right after the last one that was successful. I'll never get those images out of my mind and the feeling I had when I couldn't save him and the paramedic being super nonchalant about him not making it. Worst day of my life and so traumatic. Wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. This is also my earliest memory. I was 3.5 years old when a red-hulled freighter washed up on Quincy Beach after a strong winter storm. The family drove to view it and struck me this giant red ship was the largest thing I'd ever seen, and of course it was so out of place. It's been 67 years now, so I doubt I'll ever forget it. While in Singapore, I once saw a toddler sneeze so hard her knees gave way and she fell onto her bum. It's not particularly exciting, but I was suffering from depression at the time, and it was the first thing that had made me truly smile in weeks. Still makes me smile now. I like this. Obviously, a lot of these are going to be bloody and dark and, sad, but this was light. And, everyone's experiences comes down to a matter of perspective. And something as simple as a sneeze could help change your ways, so great. Was at London Heathrow Airport and was waiting in customs. I saw an Asian woman about mid to early 30s sprint toward the express passport line to catch up with family, and one of her boobs popped out of her shirt. Driving across town on Christmas Eve, sprinting across the yard and into the parents' house to see my mom under a sheet with police all over and my sister sobbing in the corner. It was sudden and unexpected. It shattered us. I've not been able to enjoy the holidays since. Back in the early 90s, a bunch of us were coming back from a day long of paintball. We were all pretty bushed, no one talking, just cruising along in the car. As we passed this one car, I noticed this mom and her 2 kids, all of them with red hair and predominantly bucked teeth, just laughing their heads off. I didn't say anything to anyone else, or even if anyone else noticed them. It just struck me as such a nice snapshot of the family really enjoying their time together. It was so endearing, I'll never forget it. I was young, going into 7th grade, when my family moved to a new state. We were at a pool with a pretty big water slide. I was just swimming around underwater with my new goggles, having fun, when a girl, high school at least, possibly college, went down the slide. She hits the water, top goes up, I saw my first pair of boobs. A few weeks later, we were at a water park going around on one of those lazy rivers. There's a waterfall you could go under. Another high school college girl went under it, boob popped out. All I thought was, man, seeing boobs is the place is easy. There was a wreck in front of me once. A teen girl who was not buckled in smashed her face into the windshield and proceeded to bleed out through her smashed face. Her boyfriend was injured too, but was sitting up beside her crying and obviously losing it as he watched his girlfriend die. I wasn't really able to do anything related to getting her airway open or stopping the bleeding due to the nature of the injury. I tried, but was also just talking to them to try and just help them feel like they weren't alone in this moment before the ambulance got there. Just in case she had any awareness at that point. Ambulance got there pretty quick, but she didn't make it. I still think about that boy sometimes and hope he's doing okay now, and somehow found a way to move on with his life. I can't imagine what that was like for him. Drive-in movie theater. I do actually forget what movie we were watching, but what I will never forget are the lights that appeared in the sky next to the screen. They didn't have a definite shape and just twinkled there for a second before shooting off into the sky at an impossible speed. I thought I had imagined it until I heard someone near me make a comment about them too. Not saying it was extraterrestrial in nature, but it's the closest thing to that I've seen. To this day, I have no idea what it could have been. At the World Science Fiction Convention in LA in 1984, we were making paper airplanes and tossing them out of their hotel window. We were on the 11th floor, so there was a good bit of airspace for the planes. I made one really good one and let it fly. It was almost a perfect flight. It made it all the way to a grassy area next to the pool at the hotel next door. There was a cat sitting there. The plane, silent and deadly, landed right behind the cat. The cat jumped literally 6 feet in the air. It was hilarious. I wish I could have filmed it. Watching my mom get electrocuted by running over the cord with a lawnmower. That shit will live with me forever. For me, it was half watching my mom sizzling away. Smoke was coming from her hands and her hair, and yelping because the force or power of the electric shock wouldn't let her scream, and half the complete lack of help from my neighbors. I was maybe 6 years old and was screaming for help. My neighbors all just stared at me, but no one helped. I even remember a guy walking by with his dog while I was screaming and pleading that my mom was dying and I needed help, and he just kept on walking. I lived in a nice suburb in a nice city, and we were on good terms with all of our neighbors. Taught me very early on that there is no guarantee people will help you, even if they see what's going on. Led to a bit of a hero complex, where when I see someone in trouble, I immediately run to help regardless of risks to my safety. This isn't me trying to boast, but rather that I have a knee-jerk reaction now to people in distress, because I know what it's like to ask for help and get zero response. She survived, but had a lot of burns and some heart problems afterwards. While driving one day, a bunch of cars slowed down in Rubbernecking a car wreck. Of course, I was doing the same thing. When I drove by, there was a damaged car, a motorcycle on the side of the road, and the body of the motorcycle rider. A few feet away was the motorcycle helmet, and there was blood, lots and lots of blood. That night on the local news was a story about the wreck. Apparently the motorcycle and car hit. The motorcyclist was wearing his helmet and was decapitated. He died on scene. I stopped rubbernecking car wrecks after that. My hometown is notorious for suicide by train, because on the other side of town there are multiple mental and drug abuse institutions. Once I was smoking a joint with a mate on the train platform when a small, around 1.6 centimeter woman was standing next to us. 1 or 2 minutes before the train arrived, she jumped on the track and just sat there. Me, my friend, and another bystander pulled her off of it. But the thing I will never forget was the absolute strength that woman had in her body. We were holding her down with 3 people until the police came, but she was just so abnormally strong. She almost got loose from our grip like 5 times. I guess that came from the willpower to kill herself. Sometimes I wonder what happened to her and if she is still around. I was in high school, sitting in the front row, and next to me was another student who was a constant smartass. One day he said something that really pissed off the teacher, who happened to be a football coach. The teacher grabbed him and pulled him out of his desk, which was one of those combo desk seat types. I watched him drag the kid and desk together a few feet, and then, once he had him up, he started pushing him toward the door while yelling at him to get the F out of his classroom. The kid turned around quickly and held up a fist, and when the teacher saw this, he went full Mike Tyson on the kid and started delivering lefts and right to his face and body, and they were literally about a foot in front of me. The entire class watched in stunned silence, and the kid managed to get away and run out of the classroom. The teacher then turned to us and spent the next 10 minutes yelling at us in a rage about how you can only push someone so far, and so on. We were all terrified, and thankfully the end of class bell rang and we left, completely stunned. I was in Iraq in 2003. Of the many things I saw, one that stands out is a suicide bomber that walked up to a vehicle to attack it. He chose an armored personnel carrier, which was not really impacted other than being coated with blood and body parts. His head was found nearby. My cousin on my mom's side was supposed to be babysitting me. He decided to bring me along with his big homie. He was trying to get into MS-13. They ended up pulling into a parking lot, just chilling and talking. A rival recognized their colors, shot his friend several times point blank, pointed the gun at me, and realized I was just a kid, 6 years old at the time, then ran. I blocked out a lot of what happened after the next few days. I just remember my cousin giving me a bath and making me repeat that nothing happened and I wouldn't tell my mom. 21 years later, she still doesn't know.